Okay, here we go with a practice run for my paper presenting this week. Groundwork for an Ecological Dictionary of Music Education Keywords. Paper to be presented at the 14th International Symposium on the Philosophy of Music Education, Jacobs School of Music, Bloomington, Indiana, June 6, 2025. Introduction. In this paper, I offer a logic for obtaining and defining words for an ecological dictionary of music scholarship, defined as scholarship around music teaching in public and private schools by music specialists and also other educational professionals who utilize music in their interdisciplinary instruction at pre-K to university levels and outside of institutions, such as in community groups and homeschools. The intended recipient of music scholarship are music students, teachers, and parents. The present dictionary is in the spirit of the Development Dictionary, noun, a guide to knowledge as power, a project that brought together various scholars to debate, define, and critique important words used in development scholarship. Because I intend to offer definitions that are practical or commonly understood by music students, teachers, and parents for music scholars, both deriving definitions from scholarly discourse and remaining intimate with common understandings is essential to the logic of this dictionary. The current dictionary is not intended to be comprehensive or to terminate conversation. Rather, this dictionary can be a groundwork for future revision. The possibilities for creating something like a dictionary, taxonomy, or keywords as philosophical research has been explored elsewhere. To some extent, all philosophy involves the clarification of terminology, and keywords have been understood as a method that stimulates historical considerations of legitimacy that may be considered a material force. The way we use language produces a social praxis. Rogalski suggests one reason music students, teachers, and parents disregard research is because scholarly language is too technical to be applied in the real life, on the job. The same seems true for the use of ecological words in music scholarship. According to the United Nations Security Council, climate change and the ecological crises in general are perhaps the greatest existential threats to human and non-human life in the 21st century. Ecological scholarship recognizes a web of relationships, human to human to non-human animal, non-human to non-human, and considers non-biological qualities such as places, geological histories, climates, minerals, and waterways. This dictionary exemplifies a critical refusal to partake in the centuries-long march of universities towards narrower disconnection, specialization, and the teaching of material and human obsolescence. Break. Let's see. Pencil. I wrote the word "this" twice in one of the sentences. Right there. Okay, continuing on. Why ought we have an ecological dictionary of music education keywords? A disputatio. Question 1. If the word ecology is used in various ways in published scholarship, is a dictionary wanted? I begin with an assumption. The common understanding of ecology and other related words is often correct and useful, but scholars frequently malleate words with a hammer of theory disconnected from the communities that scholarship purportedly serves. These words are often beaten into whatever scholars want those words to mean. To exemplify, if you ask a school child, teacher, or parent what nature means, you're likely to receive a naive and accurate description of trees and bears and birds, soils and beloved parks, freedom and play, places without excessive human intervention or fabrication. As a philosopher, the same question, and you might be offered an etymology such as being, essence, quality, or the powers of growth. Consequential for philosophers, but disconnected from common understandings of the word, ask an active researcher the same, and they might take a narrower definition from recent studies on, say, the nature of crescendos in Sousa trio sections, or the nature of women conductors in U.S. orchestras, or the nature of code switching in pre-service teacher training programs. For the researcher, the word nature has become something akin to the word essence or experience, perhaps but not necessarily aligned with the philosopher. Both the philosopher's etymology and the researcher's understanding are endorsed uses of the word nature, though each has malleated nature, not historically, but from its common definition. The common definition is what is commonly held by music students, teachers, and parents. The music student, teacher, or parent, when hearing the philosopher or researcher say they are studying nature, must respond with a moment of misperception. Oh, you mean that type of nature. We might write the essence of crescendos or in Sousa trio sections and avoid this temporary moment of misperception. Often, unclear words are operationalized rather than clear words being chosen. But why does this matter? Many might argue that all complex words have multiple, evolving meanings, which are setting, place, or culture dependent. Clarity comes in individual papers, theses, and monographs as the word, in this case nature, is operationalized. As a philosopher who spends quite a bit of time in my own writing operationalizing words like nature, I am sympathetic to this argument. But problems arise. The first problem is practical. In writing, scholars are writing for some specific publishing entity, such as Philosophy of Music Education Review or Arts Education Policy Review. Each of these entities have page number or word count expectations. Some of these expectations are firm limits, and others are more loosely defined. On a practical level, not every term is or can be operationalized in every paper. We have a scholarly system where the words reviewers and editors press writers to clarify in depth. Are those words subjectively deemed most important to clarify, or at least most unclear to the reviewer? Some words are treated with operationalization, and others remain vague. Words like nature, our first example, are often used in malleable ways. Question 2. Does this paper only refer to ecology-related terms used in scholarship? Simply yes, because words seem to emerge in human communities through a complicated and not entirely identifiable process, and because this process is, for the most part, outside of academic writing. Scholarship can understand, clarify, and use words that are understood by the people, using these words beyond the academy and academic publishing entities. Or otherwise, scholarly writing can descend into self-referential, occult insider knowledge that is neither understood nor used by music students, teachers, or parents. The current dictionary may highlight scholarship that 1. Make common and clear reference to ecology-related words, that which 2 is identified as uncommon but potentially useful, and that which 3 uses words in ways that are uncommon among music students, teachers, and parents, and 2 occult to be useful beyond academic writing. These uncommon occult uses may malleate existing ecological words into new non- or anti-ecological meanings. As Virgil said of Nimrod as he entered the central pit of hell, "Waste no words on him, it would be foolish. To him all speech is meaningless, as his own, which no one understands, is simply gibberish." Question 3. How then will a determination be made if a word is being used in scholarship as common clear, uncommon useful, or uncommon occult, and what makes for a suitable definition? Suitable definitions accomplish 2 things. They identify what a word means and alternatively also distinguish a word from other related words. For instance, a suitable definition of music would be of use to the extent that it tells readers what music is while distinguishing music and relating it to other nearby words such as art, drumming, choir, dance, theater, and poetry. Does music equal art, or choir, or poetry? If so, in what ways? And in what ways does music differ from these other words? Is music part of theater? Is theater part of music? Does music use poetry, or poetry use music? Is their relationship enduring or changing? No definition is likely to be wholly usable or entirely useless, as the need of music students, teachers, and parents change depending on bioregion, place, time, learning styles, and other lived essentials. Clarity for this dictionary will begin with the word ecology, which has a common way it is understood by children, teachers, and parents. And alternatively, various complex ways it is operationalized by schools. Other words are derived in relationship to ecology. Generally, ecology relates to words like nature, ecosystem, and environment. If those words hold together in the ways they are used in a particular work of scholarship, a method of verisimilitude, then the definition is common and clear. Verisimilitude is used in this case as drawn from the Latin veris, meaning true, and similis, meaning of the same kind. To restate in a different way, ecology has verisimilitude with words like nature, ecosystem, and environment when these words can be seen as of the same kind. If a given work of scholarship, ecology, is being used in a way that is of a different kind to nature, ecosystem, or environment, then a less common, uncommon definition is being used. If a scholar were to write the ecosystem was influenced by the rainfall, wind, ecosystem, has verisimilitude with common understandings of ecology, nature, and environment. This sort of common understanding is not a definition of ecology. Rather, this common understanding permits a bar through which the definitions that emerge in scholarly writing can be analyzed. And there's my figure, but I'm not going to have this at the talk. But that actually helps. Question 4. Now that we can have identified a word use as common or uncommon, how do we distinguish between those word uses that are uncommon but potentially useful from those that are uncommon and occult to music students, teachers, and parents? Common word uses can be approached as a binary. We subjectively ask ourselves how music students, teachers, and parents understand the word. This offers the scholar a simple yes-no. While scholars disagree on some categorizations, it is possible but unlikely for well-known, collectively understood words. If a scholar holds a common use of a word, often they will understand their definition as uncommon. The uncommon nature of their definition may even be understood as better than common uses of the word. These scholars ought still to categorize word uses as common, even if they quibble over a word's clarity when used in a common fashion. Question 5. Why are common and clear understood as connected? The word common here refers to how a word is commonly used. An uncommon word, then, is one that is used in a way that is not commonly used. When we say a word is clear, we ask clear to whom? I utilize the example of nature in question 1 because that word, relevant to the current dictionary, has a most common understanding related to ecology, but also a less common secondary definition, and certainly secondary and everyday use of nature outside of academic writing. As a substance, experience, principle, or essence, which is understandable by music students, teachers, and parents with some operationalization by a scholar. The most common use of a word is the clearest. Some secondary definitions require only a word or two to clarify. Some uses in scholarship, however, are not so easily grasped, and some even have come to refer to nearly the opposite definition of common understandings. If, for instance, a researcher studies the ecosystem of a classroom, what might music students, teachers, and parents expect? An analysis of houseplants the teacher has placed in the corner? Bird songs floating in through an open window? An academic study of Messiaen's bird songs? What feelings do music students, teachers, and parents experience when they realize the researcher did not mean anything related to nature, ecology, or environment, but rather operationalized ecology to basically mean social relationships of teachers and students, and an idea for which something like the word social is clear? Their use of ecosystem as social system, human community, or human constructed space can create a dissonance for music students, teachers, and parents. Redefining common words in narrow, tenuous, and uncommon ways can, as such, create occult definitions that have use in scholarly settings. This scholarship is written for doctoral students obliged to analyze it in seminars. Students who may, through dynamic teaching, internalize the understanding that universities, professors, and other scholars are meant to define words for the ignorant masses to consume. A hierarchy is generated that is anti-ecological. It is the exclusion of ecological interdependence. So there in question 5, right? I'm looking at this and I actually get it why I think the rationality is for using words like ecosystem so oddly in scholarship. I know where it emerges, right? There's this book, Steps to the Ecology of the Mind, where the author wrote like 200 pages about like ecology is like psychological and stuff like that. And then at the end of the book connects it to nature, right? Natural systems, as would be expected. But scholars, I think, are generally pretty lazy and they read the first part and then just use ecosystem in that same way that that scholar had used in the first part of their book without ever making that necessary connection to actual ecosystems. Maybe. Here we go, let's go on. Question 6. What is meant by ecological interdependence? And how does interdependence relate to the project of generating an ecological dictionary of keywords? Okay, in this section, connecting, I think interdependence is necessary, but it may be carrying the same weight as verisimilitude. Let's listen to this section, and if you have an idea, just tell me in the comments, like if I could dump this section and just keep verisimilitude, or just keep interdependence, right? Ecological and interdependence appear as two related words in scholarship. Since ecology relates to nature, ecosystem, and environment, interdependence also will to some extent. But interdependence is, unlike those words, not a commonly used word by music students, teachers, and parents. Interdependence seems to be an uncommon useful word. In conservation scholarship, indigenous writing has been important and has attracted increased attention to understand the complexity and related nature of people and landscape. In this writing, various peoples and places are understood as interdependent, defined as deeply entwined and radically distinct. In music education scholarship, interdependence leads us to reflect mutuality, community, and small-scale human relationships. At a common level, music students, teachers, and parents can be expected to hold a common understanding of the word dependence, with dependence referring to people, animals, plants, places, and things that need something or someone else to subsist and or thrive, right? I'm dependent on people listening to this video and actually commenting on it with their ideas because, you know, this is a tough section, right? Continue on. Dependence is understood as the opposite of independence and implies a lack of freedom, with independence being the freedom from dependency. While dependence is often coded negatively, independence is coded positively in the U.S., where Independence Day is a national holiday and the self-made man is a tenacious national myth. The researcher-generated word interdependence, however, without having the baggage of dependence, offers people a means to recognize the ways in which dependence is a positive force in human survival and flourishing. Interdependence sidesteps the negative connotations of dependence, while gently resisting the dominance of the independence keyword, especially in relation to domination over humans, non-human animals, plants, clean air, water, soil, and climate, the web of life, aka ecology. The word interdependence incorporates a commonly known prefix, inter, referring to dependence within. To exemplify the introduction of gray wolves to U.S.'s Yellowstone National Park in 1995, then extinct for many decades, resulted in an improvement of the ecosystem in ways that were surprising to scientists, including the increase in grizzly bear population, more wild berries and flower diversity, returning songbirds, bigger trees, cleaner water, and less erosion along the riverbanks. Ecosystems can be cultivated in such a way to arrive at unexpected positive outcomes because of oft unknown interdependent relationships. Defining words in this ecological dictionary necessitates the relationship of ecology, nature, ecosystem, and environment to one another, their verisimilitude, as well as utilizing these words in common ways that recognize the interdependence of life forms and places. Did that make clear of how I am thinking of that differently than verisimilitude? So I think verisimilitude just is generally, and that interdependence is an ecology-specific concept. Maybe continuing on, question 7. How does using commonly understood words in uncommon ways lessen the strength of these words? There seems to be 2 ways using commonly understood words in uncommon ways lessens their strength. First, music students, teachers, and parents who are often unfamiliar with the ways words are malleated in scholarship may not understand what scholarly writing is referring to, which makes the work itself more technocratic and hierarchical. There are, frankly speaking, more music students, teachers, and parents than music scholars, and all understand knowledges that affect them. Second, when these important words are approached, the reader is forced to first analyze whether this scholar means ecology as commonly understood or something else entirely. The same is true for nature, ecosystem, environment. Music students, teachers, and parents come to believe scholarly writing has a tenacious grasp on the reality of definitions from the common perspective, and that it is misleading, and because of being misleading, is inaccurate. Scholarship is something done by people in academia who malleate words for their own purposes, maybe to get tenure, and is writing that has no use or meaning for people who understand what words commonly indicate and use these words in common human situations. Question 8. Can we return to the question of how to distinguish between uncommon but potentially useful and uncommon and occult? In the example ecosystem of a classroom, question 6, a commonly understood word was used. I'm not sure that's question 6. I'm putting a mark there because it might be question 5. I'll have to go back and check. A commonly understood word was used in a way that did not point toward ecology, nature, or environment. The researchers' focus was not on interdependence with non-human life forms, plant life, or bioregions, or considering these beings, places, or things in the abstract. In this case, ecosystem became a cult in the way this word was malleated by the scholar into an uncommon word. In contrast, interdependence, an uncommon word, emerged to help clarify the way dependence, a commonly known but negatively coded word, is potentially useful. I have a second figure here, distinguishing uncommon words. Again, you can pause and look at that. Probably pretty useful. But again, not being shared in the paper. Okay, so let's see. Was that question 6 or 5? Ecosystem of a classroom. Going back now to check it out. It was question 5. That's what I thought. I changed my numbers around, so I'm going to switch that to 5. Okay, continuing on. Question 9. Do all words fit into the categories of common, clear, uncommon, useful, or uncommon, occult? It may be beneficial to explore possibilities for words that fall beyond the model. Can a word be both common and uncommon? However unlikely on the face of it, understandings of words generally held can vary, particularly due to human cultural differences. While this paper limits itself to the English-speaking words used in scholarship, at the level of common, English-speaking people living in, for example, the US, Jamaica, Ireland, and New Zealand, approach the same language in dissimilar ways, which can challenge understandings considered common or the verisimilitude of related words. Additionally, many people speak English as a secondary language, and the structure and terminology of their primary language can influence both common understandings and verisimilitude with other words. Okay, I'm going to pause there for a second because actually I do have news connected to this project. My friend Pepe Barcelos, who is originally from Brazil and then from Georgia and now works at Penn State, is coming on board to work on this project. So that'll help a lot with the words, I think, especially growing up, him growing up in a place that is culturally different and may have different understandings of these words, right? That'll definitely help the dictionary itself have more broad use. Okay, continuing on. It might be admitted that this dictionary will have use primarily for scholars in the U.S. I am drawing on scholarship published in the U.S., Canada, Europe, and Australia. This challenge does not, however, eliminate the use of this dictionary in general. Outside of the U.S. language, readers in other locations are likely familiar with scholarship published in these journals and by these book publishers. English as a second language readers are also aware of the definitions used in research, but may not have common understandings for these words, even if they know some of the words from everyday speech. Quantity of use affects quality of understanding. There are potential limitations to common understandings, but one must not consider them automatically so. As people in the U.S. understand ecology in relation to nature, ecosystems, and environment does not mechanically mean English-speaking people in Nigeria or Singapore do not. Rather, in cases where differences actually emerge, instead of leaving culture at the level of theory, specific patches can be created to modify the dictionary to help it function in different locations. Okay, so patches is one of these words I'm not defining. I think people know what patches are at this point within computers, right? I may have to throw a definition in there. If you think so, just tell me. It is a work of philosophy, right? But to save time, I just did not define it. I'm assuming people know what patches are. These culture-specific definitions can help the dictionary function as intended. In addition to culture, common understandings of words change over time, with time over generations. This dictionary, when completed, can become an ongoing project through questions such as, does the research still use the word in this way? Are there new emerging understandings being developed? Has a common meaning changed over time, or a word gone into disuse? On a small scale, local cultures are more unified in word understandings. Useful and occult are opposites in their definition. To use a word is to first understand the word's meaning. If that understanding is definitionally incorrect, by not aligning with a dictionary definition, nor with the way the word is used in published scholarship, then the onus is on dictionary writers and researchers to update definitions to reflect current understandings. Merriam-Webster updated the word truthiness from its 19th century understanding as a synonym for truthfulness to its current understanding related to seeming truthful based on a wish for it being true. The same argument for culture-specific patches to the dictionary can be made for updating the meaning of ecology-related definitions over time. Question 10. Can deriving definitions from scholarly writing and then later checking those definitions against commonly understood meanings privilege scholarly writing? Previously, I had used a grounded theory approach to open-ended questionnaire responses to derive a definition of confidence in relation to learning music improvisation. Themes that arose were listening, criticism through environment, sequential experiences, passion for a style, and openness to learning. But there were characteristic limitations to the research design. Qualitative survey research, and all research for that matter, has inherent strengths and weaknesses. With this approach's limits, including researcher biases, the types of people who self-select to complete open-ended surveys, response rates, and approaches to coding data. This approach developed results that were interesting to me, but imperfect. In contrast to that approach, this ecological dictionary can be seen as using an alternative but also limited method for deriving definitions. The differing limitations reflect philosophical methodologies, which authorize and make explicit the logical argument made for each common understanding. Limits to this method include limits to logical capacity. As Nietzsche said, that philosophy has become a kind of involuntary and unconscious memoir, a degree of subjectivity which I make explicit in my philosophical work. So pause there. I'm just remembering that after this, I didn't mark this down, but after this, survey research can test the definitions that we derive, right, to see how good they are. Continuing on. Methodologically, I'm limiting defining material to academic memoirs and peer-reviewed publications. The strength of using such sources for the construction of each definition is the research process itself, which requires precision on an ideological level. Reviewers understand themselves as gatekeepers to word use and idea use more generally. So anyway, this survey, like if I could set up a bar where I give like a definition of an ecological word, right? And they say, oh, clear to unclear, right? That's a good, I think that'd be a good way to do it. Going on. This method can be understood as beginning with more rigorous defining documents. While not privileging any specific research methodology, quantitative, qualitative, historiography, philosophy, autoethnography, etc., and then categorizing those definitions with a subjective, logical assessment of common word use, which I am capable to do as a member of a specific common community. Definitions are then to be modified using patches by people who belong to other common word use communities. Conclusion. Would other approaches be potentially better? Better can be a complicated word that can mean more accurate, more ethical, or more efficient. In the open-ended survey example offered in question 11, it's not 11 anymore, 10, right? Might even be 9. I'm going to have to look at that. Definition understandings may better represent the common and accurately representing what survey respondents stated. In addition to the design limitations already described to open-ended questionnaires, accuracy can be limited to the prompts used by the researcher. The more information a researcher offers in an item, the more accurate a response may be in relation to the word being defined, but less accuracy in relation to differences that might arise in the respondent's mind. Better can also relate to ethical and moral systems, which are various and can be personal, such as those derived from religions and personal philosophies, or institutional laws, community codes of conduct, or school behavioral modification systems. Many of these can be identified as utilitarian and others as deontological or virtue ethics, or as authoritarian, mysterious, and often unstated. Another way to understand better is as efficient. In this understanding, the present model thrives. It might be argued that, for this project, the most efficient method is best, even where subjectivity might limit the work, but also permitting future revision and improvement over a period of years. The words. Each of the words in the dictionary will emerge from ecological scholarship in music education. Each definition will be labeled as 1, common clear, to indicate the usage aligns with common understanding of the words. 2, uncommon useful, to indicate the word is not commonly understood, but that a usage is potentially useful. Or 3, uncommon occult, to indicate the word is commonly understood differently, and other words might be better used in this scholarship. The goal of this dictionary is to offer scholars more unity as they utilize words that are frequently used in ecological scholarship. Words were generated by the author as well as in conversations with other scholars such as Vincent Bates and Pepe Barcelos. Conversations with other experts helped gain words for the dictionary and identify publications where these words are operationalized. There we go. That's it. Not too bad. Of course, Pepe is coming on to help write this book, which is going to be great when we get it together. Probably aim for Rutledge again. That's for my first 2 books in this series. I'm really seeing it as a series, right? Ecological Music Pedagogy, which came out 2017. Music Lessons for a Living Planet, which came out last year, right? 2024. And then it'll be the Ecological Dictionary of Music Education Keywords, right? So we'll see how it works out. Let me know what you think. Have a blessed day.